Have you heard the word underrated before? You've probably heard the opposite word, overrated, a lot more. A lot of times at a sporting event, when a team is supposed to be really good and everyone talks about how good they are and then they just go out and stink it up, you may hear the crowd start chanting, overrated. So underrated, meaning they don't get the hype they deserve. Now maybe you feel underrated by your parents, or you feel underrated by your teachers or coaches, or even some of you may feel underrated by society. And this feeling of being underrated can even translate to our faith. Maybe you feel underrated in your faith because faith isn't that big of a deal to you. For a lot of you, faith is something that hinges on someone else, like your parents, your grandparents, your life group leader, or even your youth pastor. And some of you don't take faith all that seriously because the adults in your life have made you feel underrated. And there's a verse in the New Testament that talks all about young people and their faith. It was written by the Apostle Paul, who was the most legendary missionary in the history of Christianity. And he wrote a letter to a guy named Timothy who was young. Paul wrote this: "Don't let anyone look down on you because you are young, but set an example for the believers in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity." Wait, what? Is this verse really telling young people to set an example for older people? A group of people who sometimes treat teenagers like they're underrated? See, now Paul was a key leader in the first generation of Christians. He wrote over half of the New Testament and traveled thousands of miles around the Mediterranean spreading the word of Jesus. He also mentored young leaders of the faith like Timothy. See, Paul saw something genuine and authentic in Timothy's faith, and as a result, he put a lot of trust in him. Paul respected him a lot. So when Paul tells him not to let people look down on him because he was young, it was more of a friend-to-friend pep talk from a loyal supporter. Paul says, "Don't let people do that to you. I know you. I see something more in you than the people around you do." And now if we fast forward a little bit, Paul takes an interesting turn and talks about Timothy's family and their faith. "I am reminded of your sincere faith, which first lived in your grandmother Lois and in your mother Eunice, and I am persuaded now lives in you also." Notice that first, Paul recognized and acknowledged Timothy's sincere faith. Second, even though Timothy came from a family that believed and set a positive and healthy example of what a mature faith looked like, they both knew that Timothy couldn't count on the faith of his mom or his grandmother to be enough for him. In order to be taken seriously and not be underrated, Timothy had to make some personal choices for himself and his faith. And the same is true for you. In fact, you can think of it this way: only you can own your faith. No matter where you come from, no matter how old you are, you can choose to own a faith of your very own. It's not about what your parents want, your life group leader wants, or even what everybody else is doing. It's about you. This is about your life and your faith. It's about choosing a faith of your own. In fact, instead of focusing on how underrated you are, just focus on owning your own faith. Set an example when it comes to living out your faith and let everything take care of itself after that. Now, we are no Paul or Timothy. So what hope do you and I have for creating a personal faith that moves from underrated to, at the very least, decent? Well, let's start where you are. You don't have to be Paul, you don't have to be Timothy, you get to be you. And you get to decide what a faith that isn't underrated looks like in your own life. So where do we start? First, pick a part of your faith to own. Pick an area of your faith that you know you need to own. Your faith will determine a majority of the decisions that you make in your life. It's not just in how we interact with God, but also in how we treat friends, parents, and people we struggle to like. It factors into how we treat others. Second, don't underrate your faith. With a lot of these small changes, you may not see an immediate huge change. The payoff may take later for you to see, but don't underrate what God is doing in the process. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. The point being, you can conquer anything if you just take it day by day. Big change is a result of small decisions that you make every day. And lastly, don't let people look down on you. Owning your faith may not be the most popular thing to do in your peer group. You might find yourself asking things like, what if I lose my friends? What if people talk negatively about me? Is a personal faith really worth my status at school? And are people going to think I'm weird? And those are all normal and understandable questions. But in those moments, it's important to remember to stay focused on the long-term goal of who you want to be. Stay focused on your faith. You do that by staying focused on God. And let me help you a little bit with that. This whole series, we're going to be posting a daily devotional on our Instagram at @the_Met_youth. It will post every morning, 8 a.m., Monday through Friday for the next 3 weeks. So go check it out and let it be a tool to help you focus on your faith every day. And remember, this is your faith, and you are the only one who can own it.